The featured film today is a horror thriller called The Cursed. Set during the Battle of the Somme in 1917, we witness soldiers perish at the hands of their German enemies, including a captain who endures 3 bullet wounds to the abdomen. Despite the shortage of anesthesia, the doctor decides to perform surgery, managing to extract 2 of the bullets. However, the 3rd bullet has fragmented, prompting him to try again. To his astonishment, he finds a sizable silver bullet, but the attempt to remove it ultimately takes the captain's life moments later. A silver bullet is an unusual discovery, and the doctor confirms it is not a German bullet. The narrative then shifts 35 years before the war to a small village in France, where Baron Shames Lauren resides with his wife Isabelle and their children, Charlotte and Edward. Shames is portrayed as a ruthless and resolute man who, following the advice of the village elders, plans the massacre of a Romani clan, a group of gypsies who have recently arrived in the region and claimed part of their lands, which the Baron considers his rightful inheritance. However, the Romani leader foresaw the imminent danger the night before and instructed one of her men to prepare silver, melting some coins and shaping them into wolf fangs to serve as protection in the impending battle. On the day of the massacre, the men hired by Shames attacked the gypsy camp, resulting in deaths and the destruction of the site. However, the leader and her trusted man face even darker fates. Captured, the man suffers a brutal death, having his hands and feet amputated and being tied to a cross as a warning to anyone who dares challenge the Baron's dominion in the area. Meanwhile, the leader is buried alive and, as she slowly sinks into her grave with the silver fangs in her chest, she curses her tormentors, proclaiming that she will haunt them in their dreams until they evoke what she calls the dark on that same night. Charlotte, the Baron's daughter, dreams of the scarecrow and the silver fangs buried beneath it. A few days later, Edward has the same dream, but with the apparition of the gypsy leader, prompting him to scream in fear. Gradually, all the villagers begin to have nightmares about the scarecrow and the silver fangs. One day, while Charlotte, Edward, and other children play in the village, their friend Tim reveals knowing where the scarecrow from their dreams is. After making the Baron's children swear secrecy, Tim shows them the scarecrow and encourages them to unearth what he calls treasure. A foolish argument arises about who would have the courage to unearth the fangs until Tim accepts the challenge. Upon opening the box, he feels an irresistible urge to put on the fangs. However, in doing so, he is possessed by an evil entity and attacks Edward, causing the horrified children to flee. Charlotte rushes to the mansion, alerting her parents to the terrible situation. Shames brings Edward back home, who has survived the attack but is gravely injured. Shortly after, the doctor arrives and examines the wound, stating that Edward was attacked by a wild animal. Despite Charlotte being aware of what really happened, she keeps silent out of fear of the possible consequences for Tim and his family if she reveals the truth. Later that same night, while everyone in the mansion is asleep, Charlotte has a nightmare about her brother. She finds Edward gasping and deeply frightened. She pulls back his blanket and discovers something resembling wooden roots emerging from his body. Shocked by the sight, she lets out a scream. Her parents wake up to the commotion, only to discover that Edward has disappeared. The next day, Shames leads a desperate search for his missing son, but without success in finding him. Charlotte seeks comfort in the local church, where she encounters Tim. They take refuge in the confessional, where Tim confesses to not remembering anything after putting on the silver fangs and now fears for Edward's fate. Charlotte assures him that no one has revealed the truth about what happened that day and that his family is protected from exile. Additionally, she asks where he stored the silver fangs, and he says he brought them to the church, fear evident in his voice. Tim reads a passage from the book of Ezekiel to Charlotte, suggesting that the silver fangs were made from the 30 silver coins Judas received for betraying Jesus. He then tears the page from the Bible and hands it to Charlotte, saying she might need it. However, their conversation is interrupted when Charlotte's maid discovers them. Tim then flees and spots Edward in the forest, but as he follows him, he is attacked by an unknown beast. Meanwhile, a traveling pathologist named John McBride is in town searching for gypsies. He meets with the local police chief, Alfred Molière, who involves him in the case of Edward's disappearance. Shortly after, John and Alfred encounter Shames, who informs them that the situation has worsened with the discovery of Tim's body, believed to have been caused by the same animal that attacked Edward. Together, they head to the forest where Tim's body is. Everyone is horrified by the eerie scene, and John finds a page from the book of Ezekiel in Tim's coat. After assessing the situation, John informs Shames that the boy's death was likely caused by a wolf. With this information, Alfred believes the entire event is just an animal attack and a case of disappearance, deciding to return to town. However, John chooses to stay to assist in the investigation. Later, Shames receives John at his house and he promptly begins to explore the mansion for useful clues. During his investigation, he discovers a bloodstain on the door, presumably from Edward. While examining the surroundings, John instructs Shames to reinforce all windows and doors with wooden boards as a precaution. Although somewhat confused, Shames agrees to follow the instructions. That same night, John is haunted by a disturbing dream involving the silver fangs and the scarecrow, which take away his wife and daughter. The next day passes without incident, and at night, John secretly scrapes the bloodstain on the door and examines it under his microscope. He compares Edward's blood with a sample of his own blood and notices notable differences, observing that the cells in Edward's blood seem to absorb his. Before he can proceed with his investigation, a noise from outside the mansion interrupts his studies. He decides to investigate and finds something lurking between the boards, staring directly into his eyes. Suddenly, Shames appears, and together they decide to go out to search for the source of the noise, but find nothing. Aware that the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous, John offers to hunt the beast, while Shames summons the village elders and instructs them not to go out without armed escort. During the meeting, one of the elders expresses doubts about John's ability to help them, mentioning his own experience dealing with the Galdan beast alongside the military, suggesting that what happened there might be recurring in the town. However, even in the face of fear and imminent danger, 3 villagers decide to take the risk and go to work in the fields without escort. As expected, fear becomes reality when the beast appears and kills the 2 men, leaving Amahai, the woman who accompanied them, gravely injured, but she manages to escape. Upon discovering that Amahai survived the attack but was bitten, John immediately sets out to find her. However, when they arrive at the village, Amahai has already fled into the forest, where she begins to undergo transformation. The situation continues to worsen, with more people being infected, and John instructs Shames to gather all the villagers in the church and prepare barricades at the doors while he goes out to hunt the beast. Later, on that same night, John and Isabel struggle to find sleep and sit down to talk. During the conversation, John reveals details about the beast that had taken the lives of his wife and daughter. He also shares the story of how, after the death of 13 more people, a group of traveling gypsies arrived in his town, suggesting that the curse was seeking revenge. Upon hearing this, Isabel reveals that the gypsies had tried to claim her husband's land, but before she could say more, Shames appears and interrupts them, ordering them to stop discussing curses. The next day, John enters the forest and sets up several traps in hopes of capturing the beast. After an intense confrontation, the beast falls into one of the traps, being wounded and immobilized, allowing John to kill it with a precise shot. He then transports the corpse to Shames' stables and performs an autopsy so that he and the other elders can witness what has been haunting them. To everyone's horror, Amahai emerges from the belly of the beast, emitting endless aggressive screams. John declares that she is beyond salvation and, reluctantly, one of the elders ends up shooting her before Amahai transforms again. Witnessing this terrible event, Shames fears that his son may be facing the same fate. In the following days, some of Shames' family employees flee the village, tormented by fear of the beast. Meanwhile, John confronts Isabel about a woman buried in the field, a figure he saw in his dreams. Isabel then reveals the atrocities committed by her husband. Amidst this conversation, they confront Charlotte about the silver fangs, and she confesses that she hid them in the church. After finding the silver fangs, John instructs a blacksmith to turn them into bullets, planning to use these bullets to break the curse. Meanwhile, Shames gathers a group of men to hunt the beast, but it does not appear. Unaware of its proximity to the mansion, where the beast attacks his maid Anais while she collects clothes on the clothesline. Although she survives the attack with serious injuries, Anais decides to conceal the incident, silently suffering with pain and agony. As night falls, John carefully plans his attacks and notices the blood-stained sheets on the clothesline, indicating where the beast attacked Anais. Moved by this, he visits the Lawrences and questions if anyone is missing from the house. Everyone is present except Anais, who discreetly left to tend to her injuries. However, Shames, frustrated with John, suggests he leave, confident that his hunting party will be enough to eliminate the beast. The next day, Isabel disagrees, sparking an argument between the 2 men. John insists on staying until the army arrives, maintaining his post on the 2nd floor. Anais begins to transform, resulting in rapid breathing and cries of agony. The strange noises alert Shames, who arms himself and sets out to investigate. However, upon reaching the maid's quarters, he is attacked and injured by Anais, now completely transformed. In the intense struggle, the candles are knocked over, setting the room on fire. Meanwhile, John temporarily leaves his post and finds Isabel, who awakens to the sounds from upstairs. She questions her husband's whereabouts, and Shames manages to shoot the creature with a precise shot, killing it. The noise alerts John, but upon arrival, the room is engulfed in flames, leaving only the beast's corpse. He hears Isabelle scream and rushes to her. She informs him that Shames fled outside. John instructs her to find Charlotte and escape as the house is on fire, while he runs after Shames, who has taken refuge in the stables. Aware of the fate of the bitten, Shames douses himself in gasoline and sets himself on fire, thus avoiding attacking his own family when he transforms. John tries to stop him, but it's too late. Meanwhile, Isabelle and Charlotte attempt to flee the burning mansion and encounter the last beast, being forced to return and hide. They manage to evade it and reunite with John, who plans to seek refuge in the church, the only safe place. However, the beast pursues them through the forest but seems to detect John's silver bullets and avoids attacking them, allowing them to safely reach the church. Inside, John talks with Tim's deceased father, who wishes to go out to hunt the beast but is convinced by John to wait until dawn, when they can lure the beast to an open area and execute a precise shot with the silver bullets. Later that night, while everyone is deeply asleep, Isabelle is in prayer when suddenly she hears Edward's voice calling her. In a panic, she opens the church doors, allowing the beast to invade, unleashing a frenzy of attacks against the villagers present. John is ready to fire the silver bullet, but Isabelle steps between him and the creature, aware that it is her son. With no alternative, John pulls the trigger, and the bullet pierces through Isabelle and the beast. As Isabelle lies on the ground, breathing her last breaths, she realizes that Edward has returned to his human form and embraces him. The curse is undone by the bullet, and the boy survives, but his mother cannot withstand the injuries. With no home or parents, John decides to adopt and raise the Lawrence siblings before leaving the village. Charlotte returns the 3 silver bullets to John, found on the church floor. 35 years later, it is revealed that Edward is the wounded captain in the war, with the silver bullet lodged in his body since he was hit in childhood. He succumbs on the operating table, and Charlotte retrieves the 4th bullet, returning it to John, who is now bedridden and in his final moments.